When Nina's mother, Renee, dies, she discovers that not everything is as glamorous as the art world makes it seem. Art galleries, rich friends, paintings worth millions. It all boils down to one burning question. Was Renee a fraud in the art world, or was she covering up something darker?
I always knew that my mother was intense. Renée, as she had made me call her since I was 6, was that rare artist with a magnetic, dangerous charm, someone you'd feel lucky to meet and afraid to disappoint. In the art world, my mother was an icon. She was a woman who made an impact in the 1970s and 1980s with her provocative art style. His work was famous. Her personal life, on the other hand, was sealed, even to me, her only daughter. She was reserved, distant, and a woman who left me with more questions than answers. "Come on, Nina," she would say, usually with a glass of champagne in hand. "It's kind of dull, honey, you're asking questions all the time. Enjoy life while you're living it, not when it's too late." She always spoke like this, in riddles, as if there was wisdom trapped beneath her words. But I couldn't understand them, even as an adult. They left me confused and often frustrated. After Renée's death, dealing with her estate seemed surreal. Our relationship was never very close, so I was never emotionally close to my mother. But as an art curator, I felt a strange sense of duty to preserve her legacy, not even as my mother, but as someone whose name deserved to be remembered. "Come on, Nina," I said to myself as I entered her house. It was a world apart from my cozy place. Renée's house screamed, "Old money." "Just do it, and your mother will be resting," I said aloud to the marble statue of Aphrodite in the hallway. Rummaging through her stuff was like digging up a stranger's relics, and I wasn't prepared for what I found. Hidden in the back of her closet, under layers of dust and untouched for years, I discovered a painting. It was impressive and immediately unsettling. Raw, dark, and personal, it felt more like a wound than a work of art. This was a side of my mother's art that I had never seen before. And as I examined it, a note slipped out of the back. "For the one who really understands." It felt like an invitation, as if she had left it behind just for me. But understanding my mother was like chasing shadows in the dark. I decided to authenticate the painting, hoping to find some clarity. My contact was an old friend in the art world, someone who knew his reputation as well as I did. But as he studied the piece, his face darkened. His office was dark and scary, and I didn't know if it was his reaction or the environment that made me so uncomfortable. "What's wrong, Winston?" I asked, feeling a slight pang of fear. "There are something unusual here," he said slowly. "Your mother was brilliant, no doubt, Nina. But let's just say that there has been speculation about the authenticity of some of his works for a long time." He paused, looking at me carefully, as if trying to figure out my reaction. But I knew Renée. Rumors followed her everywhere. She was the kind of woman who didn't pay attention freely, making people speculate. "Continue, you insist." "There were rumors of counterfeits and black market deals, Nina, and even something about organized networks. Look, I think there were things about your mother's career that she didn't want people to know." The words hit me like a slap in the face. "Winston, are you saying that my mother, the great Renée, was involved in artistic fraud?" He met my gaze. "Go find this man," he said, scribbling a name on a page. He was a reclusive artist from his mother's time. A man who was as celebrated as Renée before disappearing from the scene in the early 80s. The next morning, I was standing on the porch of a man named Daniel. I wasn't sure if I wanted to go down that rabbit hole, but I also didn't like the idea of people thinking my mom was a fraud. When he opened the door to his brown sandstone house, his gaze instantly fixed on the painting, still curled under my arm. His hand trembled as he gestured for me to come in. "You're Renée's daughter," he said, sinking into a worn leather sofa. "I knew you'd come here one day." I felt a shiver run down my spine. "You knew my mother well, didn't you?" "Yes. You two were next." He nodded, his eyes fixed on the covered painting I had carried and placed in the corner of the living room. He looked at her as if he didn't dare look away. We were close, yes. More than close. I knew her better than anyone, I think. Maybe better than herself. We were confidants. Lovers too, he said. I hesitated, so I discovered the painting. I wanted to know if he had seen this painting before. And as soon as I lifted the curtain, his expression darkened even more, as if he had seen a ghost. I didn't know she had kept it, he muttered. This play. It was supposed to be private. Guys, Nina. Daff. I thought bitterly. It was a side of her that I had never seen. What happened between you two? I pressed, feeling the question burn in my throat. What was so personal that she hid it? For a moment he was silent, lost in some painful memory. Tell me, Daniel, I said. Renée is already dead. There is no need to hide anything anymore. We were in love, Nina, he said finally. And I've never felt such fierce and destructive love. We were both obsessed, with each other and with our art. It's hard to explain to someone who wasn't there. That kind of passion. What's changed? He insisted. He hesitated, looking at the painting. There was another artist, a friend we both knew well. One night things went too far. The accusations, the jealousy. And he ended up lifeless, found at the bottom of a large staircase. He exhaled slowly. The police called it an accident, but there were rumors. Renée was implicated, but there wasn't enough to blame her. My mind was spinning. Are you saying she was involved? Daniel looked away, his voice almost a whisper. We were all involved. That night changed everything. Renée blamed herself, and she couldn't shake the guilt. She threw herself into the work, but this piece. It is his confession. She buried her pain and shame in every brushstroke. She painted with both hands, you know? He shaded with the weaker hand. I looked at the painting, understanding its depth, its tortured beauty, in a way I had never understood before. But this truth seemed empty, incomplete. Why didn't she leave? Why didn't she change her life? Why didn't she go back to my father? He looked at me with something broken in his eyes. Leaving would mean giving up everything she has built. Fame was a trap from which she could not escape. His mother was a survivor, but it cost her dearly. I left Daniel's house shaken. My mother's story was unraveling, but the strands were dark, stained. For days, I avoided the painting, almost afraid to look at it again, as if it confirmed my worst fears. But late at night, restless and alone, I picked up the painting, and saw Renée's face in the brushstrokes, her secrets and her sins. Sitting in the dim light of my living room, I thought about my own life, how I built my career trying to honor her legacy. Now I wondered if I was glorifying something much darker than I had imagined. My mother was not just a genius. She was human, flawed, and haunted by choices I never knew she made. Still, I needed to understand her completely. I went back to his property and looked for anything that could add context. I found an old diary, hidden among his belongings, the pages brittle and yellowed by time. Flipping through it, I discovered entries from that fateful period in the late 70s, with sharp and feverish words. I tried to warn him, she wrote. But he pushed me and I pushed back, and I couldn't stop him. The look in his eyes as he fell, it's etched in my mind. Can't erase it. I can't forgive myself for what happened. The words made my chest tighten. All those years she carried that weight alone. She let that fuel her art, but she kept her silence, even from me. A few days later, I returned to Daniel, bringing the journal with me. He answered the door, his face marked by regret, as if he had lived with his own ghosts all this time. Nina, he said, come in. I read her diary, I told him softly. I know what happened. He nodded, looking away as he collapsed on the couch. I wish I had protected her better. I thought I was helping by keeping the truth hidden. But that simply buried us both. You loved her, didn't you? How much did you really love her? Yes. More than I could handle, he said. I thought if I kept her secret, I would be saving her. She tried to copy the work of some of our artist friends. Renée said it was part of her healing process. So I let her get away with it. That's when the rumors of fraud and forgery began. But in the end, there was no cure. Instead, it just fed the darkness inside her. For a moment, I felt a twinge of understanding. Both were victims of their choices, linked to that tragic night. I looked at the painting again, realizing that she had tried to speak through her work, to atone without words. That was all she could do. Over the next few weeks, I found myself drawn back to the painting, examining every inch of it, studying it as if it were a puzzle I could finally solve. The tortured features, the fractured colors, they all told a story of loss and guilt, of a woman who had been more than a mother or an artist. She had been human, and had been trapped in her own legend. Eventually, I decided to do the one thing she couldn't. On the day of the gallery's opening, I stood in front of the painting, surrounded by people who had come to see Renée's lost masterpiece. They were there for their genius, for their art. They had no idea about the woman behind it. But I had. This painting, I began, is my mother's final confession to the world. It's more than just art. It's her pain, her guilt, her story. My mother was flawed, but she was honest in her work. She exposed her soul to the world through her art because she couldn't find peace in any other way. The crowd moved, their faces a mixture of astonishment and curiosity, even disbelief. That's when I felt a strange sense of closure, a peace I didn't know I needed. I was 10 years old when I learned that my mother was not maternal. I was 10 years old when I stopped expecting her to be my mother. But now, at 31, I've finally found peace in my relationship with Renée. As silence took over the gallery, I felt her presence, as if she were there, finally at rest. I left knowing that I had discovered my mother's truth, a truth that haunted her so much that she tried to copy the work of another artist. But now, in the open air, it felt lighter, as if we could both finally breathe. Let us know what you think of this story and share it with your friends. It might brighten their day and inspire them. See you in the next exciting story.